Alright, so we're going to be using kind of the same technique that we used when we built our little paint-along. So we're going to be doing this whole thing on the canvas in black and white. So it's very important that you guys have your canvas and that you're ready to go. We're going to paint it in black and white so I can ignore the color information. If I was doing this off my phone, which I'm not, but if I was, I would probably create a version of my picture that was just black and white and use that version as my resource. So that would be the resource that I would be building my picture from. I'm going to water down some black. I'm going to make some observations. If I was to go to the top here and to the bottom here and imagine where the halfway point is, that gives me some general idea. And then the halfway point again, the halfway point again, and then I could split it in half this way. These kind of marks will help me understand how to build this picture so that my mountain isn't too far to one side, so that my sky isn't too low. It'll just give me a general idea of how to build my picture, because I can go halfway and halfway and halfway. That is definitely a little distorted because I'm looking down on it, I think. So I'm going to, or sideways at it. I'm not looking down at it, so I'm going to stand up. And these are going to be the new marks. The nice thing about painting in black and white is the white is very opaque, so it will cover anything that I want it to cover. And then at the very end, we are going to use some glazes of color to get this where it needs to be. So something new that we didn't really talk about, we kind of talked about when we talked about the river in the paint-along, but something new about this is I want you guys to think about how the direction and the shape of your brush strokes can support what you're painting. So if I am painting ground or sky or anything like that, I don't want to use vertical brush strokes. So when I'm coming in here to paint this grass, I can see, number one, the grass is flat, so it's laying down, but also there's kind of a swoop in the grass that kind of moves this way. So I might kind of think about how those kind of strokes like this, getting smaller as they get further back and getting bigger as they move forward, might help. I'm still using horizontal strokes, but I'm also supporting that kind of swoop motion. Might even throw in a couple of swooping marks. Remember, the more paint I get on here, the faster that I'm going to be able to paint, because the initial paint is really going to get absorbed by the canvas or pushed back by the canvas. But once I have a nice coat of thick paint on here, it's going to really just like the paint's going to glide across the surface a little. So I've got this dark shape here. It's halfway. It's about a quarter of the way over here. So I'm just going to kind of like rough this in for now with some watered down black. And I will fine tune it as I go, looking at the big picture. So if I was to carry this over kind of from here, this kind of goes all the way across. But see, you see how my angle was headed up too much? So now I need to kind of come back towards this halfway line. And really it's lower than that even. So I could really bring that down even more. Okay, just to make it clear, I'm going to kind of paint some of this so that line kind of goes away a little bit. This is actually, on the right side, all going to be sky. And even the sky should be done with horizontal strokes, because if you look at how the clouds sit, they kind of sit in these horizontal bands. Because they're actually, just like stuff sitting on the ground, the clouds are sitting on a layer of air and pressure that makes them seem flat. Unless they get closer to you, just like stuff on the ground, I'm going to be looking more down on stuff on the ground. As clouds get closer to me, I'm going to be looking more up at them. So clouds really close, if my camera's angled up, might seem much rounder, but clouds at the horizon will seem really flat. Okay, so I'm kind of just laying out some color here. I'm going to need more white before I get too far. And so I had my line about here, and if I was to carry that across, the top of my mountain, which is just to the side here of the half mark, is just a little bit up. And then if I go all the way across, it kind of connects here. So that's easy enough. And I'm going to let my brush wiggle a little bit. So that when my brush wiggles, it shows me a little bit more natural form. And then I'm going to come back. Well, when I go all the way across, this is kind of a little lower here, but not a lot lower. So this is a much steeper drop here. Just like I was talking about the trees on the other mountains, this seems too peakish too, so I'm going to kind of like chill it out a little bit. Just like I was talking with the other mountains, especially here, because this is in California and it gets very hot there, all these trees that are in here because this is kind of like a creek bed, probably dry all summer, and then when you get like rains in the winter, in the fall, and even in the spring, those rains kind of like turn this into a little creek, and this is one of the only places these trees are getting water from. So you see all these trees are kind of like down in this creek bed, and everything else is kind of not trees. And then up here, this is all trees because this is probably a side of the mountain that, stops precipitation, and it might, as precipitation drifts through the sky, it kind of hits that side of the mountain, or possibly it's got more shade, so the water that does get there doesn't evaporate. Some of the stuff is naturally based, why it acts one way and not a different way. Not painting every single tree here, I'm just kind of roughing in the big shapes. I don't want to forget these boys off in the horizon. Really tiny trees back here. I think those are important. And then I've got some roads, some fire roads. I wonder if this angle is too severe down here. This angle might be too severe. Just generalizing. Right now, big shapes, not getting tied into any detail at all. It's too early for the detail, and I'm also getting a layer of paint down quickly so that when I do go to start painting this, I don't have to fight with the canvas as much, because I'll have this smooth layer of acrylic paint kind of pushing back. Even though my picture is painted, I think I am going to look at it a little through my black and white filter on my phone to help me understand, the lightness and the darkness of the mountain or the hill compared to the lightness and the darkness of the sky. Letting some of these colors blend wet on wet, that's going to help me achieve a more natural look. Notice I'm using those real horizontal brush strokes to help support and move across the landscape. Painting and repainting different areas, fine-tuning little things. I'm never just saying, oh, that's perfect, just how it is. And I'm also not trying to get it perfect in one shot and then afraid to actually keep working on it or even work on it at all the first time because I want it to be just right in one pass. That's not going to happen. Doesn't happen for me. It's not going to happen for you. Those hay bales I'm going to go in later after I lay some of the groundwork there to get. So let's get out my phone and look at this in black and white and see if I notice anything. So I want to put my filters on. That's those 3 circles. And I want to go down to mono. And I can see that the sky, if you look at here, I can see the sky is significantly lighter than the mountains, and then the clouds are even lighter than that. But the sky does start to get darker up here, the closer it is. I could also see, that this dark's not quite as dark as these darks, which I already got that, so that's good. And probably these hills up in here could be darker even than they are, and this could be darker than it is, and that'll help me kind of get that sky where it needs to be without making the sky too light that I can't even see the clouds. So that's something to think about and work on for me. Maybe this color would be better done down here. Just going to get a layer of paint on this. Not even, still focused on the horizontal brush strokes, but I'm not worried about like some of the detail of the movement. I will get into that after I kind of lay some of this in. So I'm going to let it be a little streaky over here, because there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's so far away that it's not, they some of these forms are just like streaks on the land, little lines, not like a lot of real information. Bigger brush is good. This is a 16 by 20 canvas. Nice thing about this is you could literally, just put a wire across the back, or even just put a nail in the wall and just hang this on the nail. It's a quick and easy thing to hang. Trying to mix one color and paint this all thing a solid color is a mistake. This is nature, this is a natural form, so there is going to be a lot of variety in this, and letting the actual paint mix create these kind of streaky effects and even some kind of anomalies. These are going to actually replicate nature much better than just one flat color. So moving forward, I'm going to just really kind of focus in on trying to use multiple grays, even if it's like a big area that's mostly the same color. So I've got to get this lighter than this and darker than this. That is where I want to be. Again, not even focused on detail at all. Big picture stuff. Notice how those streaks I put over here on the left earlier even kind of help add like a transition a little bit. Those dabs that I'm doing right there, those are some of the lights that might be showing through the trees that later on I can kind of come back and shape a little bit later. And in my photograph, this almost blends right here, so I'm fine that it's like a pretty similar color. It's good that those are almost the same. So now I could come in with a lighter gray, almost like the gray at the bottom, and use that to paint the sky in. Could lighten that up even more, I think. Even though I'm going to put the clouds in, I feel like this color on its own had more distinction. Painted over some of those real little trees back there so I can kind of just paint them in. Horizontal. It's not following the mountain, it's following gravity. Need a little more white. Some of you at the beginning we talked about, asked me about like little paint, or you bought little paint bottles, and I said you'll probably need to buy more white. So this might be the project where you run out of white. I feel like this mountain's a little too tall. I might have to let some of this dry to push back on it a little. And again, I don't want the sky to relate to the mountain. I want it to relate to gravity. So, first part complete. Cover the whole canvas and get the big shapes down. Big shapes, covered canvas. So perfect. I did that, and it did not take me that long. All that with running my mouth took me about 18 minutes. So that's pretty good that I was able to get all of that done in 18 minutes. Covered the whole canvas, big shapes. It's not perfect. My mountain's too pointy now because I tried to reshape it. It's too tall. So there's definitely some things that I can do to work on as I move forward, which I will do. It's not dry yet, so I'm going to just kind of come in here and make some little changes. So one of the things I'm going to do is try and get these rows where there's grass growing in the actual rows. Get some of the shape out. Again, it's natural, so it doesn't have to be perfect, and I'm going to keep working on this. I'm not going to be done real quick like the other one, because this is much bigger. Sorry, it's like pushing the corner down. I'm I'm not going to do the fence in the front because I think it's ugly, but I am going to put this plant because I think it's a nice balance to what's going on back there. So right now I'm really just implying this. I will need it to be like more dry to get in here with more detail. Haven't even started going vertical. These are all grasses, so they should be kind of vertical marks. But what I'm doing now is just laying a foundation of where I'm going to put them, how they're moving, how they're sitting on the ground. Adding some color variation to the whole thing so that I have something to build on and kind of like a foundational idea of where everything's going to go. The land is lifting up a little. There's a hill, so some of the lines I'm letting them kind of like angle back to kind of show me that. Try and lay this road in again. Not nearly dark enough. Those roads are fire roads mostly, so they can get access to areas if there's fires. I'm noticing that this is significantly lighter than the other parts of the hill, or the other trees. It's much lighter right here. So I'm going to come in with some pure white here. Just to roughen some of these cloud shapes. They're not going to be white yet, but it'll be a beginning that I can build on. And I've got white paint, and I've got time, so I may as well use it. You can already see how the clouds down here by the horizon end up being like smaller. They're further away, and that Doesn't mean there can't be small clouds close to you and big clouds far away, but what it means is that when those things happen, the big clouds that are close to you will be much bigger, and the small clouds that are further will be much smaller. Okay. So getting these clouds laid out. Again, here's my picture. My painting's a little wet to put my picture out here, but I'm doing it anyway. So you can kind of see some of the things I'm looking at and doing. Not getting hung up on it being exactly right. That's one of the great things about painting nature. If any of you guys turned in a photo with buildings, I probably told you don't do it because the buildings are not nearly as forgiving. The complexity of nature can be a challenge sometimes, but the fact that it's natural also allows you the freedom to alter it in ways, and when people look at it, they don't even know that you did, unless you go so far or you break the laws of nature when you're doing it. And even when I'm building these shapes, I'm using horizontal strokes. You see, I'm always moving from side to side. For those of you that don't know what horizontal means, it means side to side. Not up and down, not diagonally at an angle, but just side to side. I can use some of this whiter gray color too, and maybe start to come in here and imply some of the bales. And I am not going to do every single bale here. I think in the long run it'll make me insane to try and do that, so I'm not going to. Remember, we were going to glaze this with color. So I'm just kind of showing some of the lighter grass back here. Letting the paint get thicker, applying some texture. Even though this paint is, I'm making little vertical marks, but I'm kind of moving the brush in the direction of the swoops and of the horizontal movement, just to imply some of this grass texture. If instead of grass I had like bushes or something back here, I might be using my most messed up brush and dabbing it like this to try and get some of that look or effect. And you can really see how it's starting to come together. I might put some of these fence posts up here. We'll see. I might change my mind. It'll help us understand those way back far fence posts. So like I've got like a divot in here. So like there are some bushes back here. So value is how light or dark stuff is in art. That's what people mean in art when they use the word value. Not how much it's worth, emotionally, or how much it's worth monetarily, but how light or dark it is what it really refers to. Some artists will do a value study before they start a painting. So they'll paint the whole thing in black and white just to understand it better. We are doing a type of painting where we're actually going to do a value underpainting that is going to help set the foundation, and we're just going to glaze the colors on top. And this is going to be, all our detail is going to come from this, just like it did in our practice painting. So you see these aren't grasses, so I'm trying to dab it, not going straight down on the brush, putting an angle on it so that the actual bristles of the brush don't get completely ruined. Need to add some irregularity, so some of the bushes need to be taller, more clumpy, maybe even darker pockets. You don't want all your bushes to look the same. And here's like a stray bushes here. Probably be a little lighter. It's a good idea to just get some music and kind of zone out a little while you work too. Okay, my fine brush, this one fine brush is not doing so good. So I'm going to use a different one. Because of the amount I paint, I run through these brushes pretty good. So I'm going to come up here and show the heavy posts. It's important as far away stuff you don't overdo it. We tend to want to overdo it. If I had only a big chunky brush, I wouldn't even do this at all. Using my other hand to stabilize his hand while I work. Real light versions of these posts. In between, I'm getting paint on my brush and then wiping a lot of it off. These ones are the closest to us. I'm letting them be a little heavier. And here I notice along the fence line over here, there's like grasses. Like a real light gray kind of line along the bottom of that. Some little details here and there I'm finding. Look at your picture. Everything you need to know is there. Sometimes we want to make stuff up, and you're not using the same picture I am, so you gotta really look at the picture you're working from. Not a lot of real detail yet. Coming back here with this brush, a little gray. And I can't forget that these things here, these hay bales, are also, they're rough. They're also casting a shadow in grass though. So I'm going to kind of use some of the texture of the grass when I paint out that shadow. And the shadow's kind of interrupting. Being interrupted by the grass. Starting to apply some of the bales. It's interesting because they're like kind of like in rows because the way they're made, but they're not perfect rows. Foreground's going to get the most details. So like where this hay is. But right now the paint's still wet, so I'm kind of like laying in some of the foundation for these things. And I'll build details on top. Pictures from up where my parents retired in California. I don't live there anymore. But I love these golden colors in the hills. Okay, just starting to lay this all out. I think I got a decent start here. Some of these are casting shadows out onto the field. It's one of my better brushes, so I don't want to do too much of this. And the truth is, when I glaze these trees, they're going to mostly stay black. Those glazed colors aren't going to really do much except for around the edges here. And I'm going to try and glaze them with more than one color. Some of these trees are like kind of an orangey green, and some of them are more of a yellow green. Still pretty big for those. All right, I think for today that's a good first day. I didn't get all the hay bales. Um, some of the stuff that I was trying to accomplish, I did though. So I definitely got it painted. So there's paint on the whole thing really quick. Then I started laying in, and I do think I'm going to put these posts in here. I think it kind of like plays off those teeny tiny posts back there. Um, I got paint on the whole thing. I laid out my general shapes and colors. So I feel like next time I can come in here with it dry, fill in some more of this area, push and pull some of these textures, maybe some of these colors, take another look through the black and white filter on my phone, and really just kind of build this picture out over time. So that's where I'm going to stop for today. Hopefully you guys got to a similar point. Good luck, and don't forget to turn in your 60 minutes worth of work for today.